So today we're going to talk about the Dexters Lab episode of Rude Removal. I thought that was appropriate because Genndy Tartakovsky's new movie, Fixed. Dexters Lab Rude Removal was a rumored episode for a long time. It was a lost episode, much like the Dead Bart episode. Nobody thought it was real. Everyone thought it was fake. They thought this could not be real. Nobody believed that it could be some real you know what I mean? So what happened is it had been talked about a while, and supposedly when they made this episode, they made it and standards and practices didn't like it. So why is this banned specifically? I guess I haven't gone into that. So basically, Dexter is making a machine that will take out the rude part of your personality. So Dee Dee will stop bothering him in his lab, which is very rude to him. And so then she will bother him less and stuff like that. They both get into the rude removal machine, and it doesn't just remove your rudeness, it makes a copy of you that is all your rude stuff. And so when they're nice, they have like these English accents. When they're mean, or I guess just Dexter has a New York accent, which is very funny. They go up and get food from their mom and are cursing a ton, or just bleeped out the whole time. Anytime they curse, there's just no about it. But she gets upset because they're being really mean to her. They're rejecting her food. They're being really rude. All this stuff. And then the nicer Dexter and Dee Dee come in. I do like that they refer to the rude Dexter and Dee Dee referred to, or the rude Dexter refers to Dexter and Dee Dee as Dorkster and Dum Dum, which that was good. I like that one. I need to use that as an insult to people. Hey, it's Dorkster and Dum Dum. I like that. That was pretty good. But they mess up the kitchen. The nicer ones have to clean everything up. They eventually bring them back together at the end and all that stuff. But it's basically like the idea is the rude ones were cursing a lot, but they just bleeped it out, which was honestly funny that they did that. And so even though it had bleeps in it, the one that was finished had bleeps in it. Supposedly there is a recording of them saying the bad words, but that has not been unearthed. They made fan edits on YouTube. That's why this one doesn't have the link to those uncensored ones, because those are fan edits made by a bunch of idiots who decided to make one, but it's just like that's not the real thing. We don't have that audio. Cartoon Network decided never to release it. So it was made during the second season. We are unaware of what episode this would have been a part of. We don't know where this would have been in the production. We don't know that. So it was completed, but censors and practices were like, you cannot release this. For a long time, it would play at animation festivals, and particularly when Genndy did appearances and other animation festivals, and he even said in a Reddit AMA, next time I'm making an appearance, I will bring it with me. He would always play at places because it was like this unique thing. Everyone would get excited, stuff like that. Although Dexter's Lab is obviously Genndy Tartakovsky's show, and I am reviewing this because of Fixed, which is why I think that's appropriate. However, this was not directed by him, nor was it written by him, actually. I think Genndy just said, I ain't dealing with this. So it was actually written, or in the show, if you look at any listing on who wrote this, it was Chong Lee and Craig McCracken. It says in the episode, it says storyboarded by Chong Lee and Craig McCracken. If you look at any listing, it says written by. I think the storyboard is pretty much because they storyboarded as writing, but just to clarify that distinction, it was directed by Rob Rossetti. He did seem to like to bring that out anytime he could, and seems to, at least, I don't know if he was fully taking credit for the but he did bring that out all the time. He really would. So I actually thought he was involved in rude removal until I started researching it, looked up, and I was like, oh, he's not in it. So, but this would play with Genndy at appearances, and then finally came out on YouTube in January 2013. So it took about 15 years to actually be released. From what I read, it didn't air on TV. I thought it did, but apparently it was just a YouTube thing on Adult Swim, and then it came down. I actually like this episode. I think it's fine. I think standards and practices went a little too far. But at the time, I know Cartoon Network gets a little worried about, like, they don't want to upset the parents when they're essentially, I understand they're making kids entertainment and that shit, so they don't want to just put out something like this. I'm a little surprised it got so far in production. I sort of get what standard practices were doing at the time, because they don't want the parents to get upset. And I'm sure they're aware they don't want an outrage, much like what happened to New Adventures of Mighty Mouse. And I'm sure there's a bunch of executives and stuff who that is still very real too, especially at the time. So they were not going to release it. And I sort of understand that. But it became this lost thing. But obviously by 2013, it really didn't matter then. And it did actually get released. As an episode, I like it as a Dexters Lab episode. I think it's a fun little concept. I mean, it's only 7 minutes, so you can't get that upset about it. It's really just a 7-minute thing. He's cursing a lot and all that shit. But like, it really is just like a fun little idea that, you know, the rude kids would curse, which I think also shows like you shouldn't curse. So isn't that okay? Isn't that fucking okay that if the kids don't curse, like if it shows that they're bad, you couldn't argue that. It's a fun concept in the episode. I get why, if I was, you know, Gendy was still the showrunner, so he was still like okayed it and was like, yeah, we should do that. And his boy Craig McCracken and all that stuff. I like it. I hadn't watched it since it came out and everything like that. There was kind of a lot of talk on it when it came out. We don't hear as much about it since, but I thought since Gendy Tartakovsky's putting out his big like R-rated dog sex comedy, this was probably the last time he really made sort of like an inappropriate kind of comedy thing, or was at least sort of involved, but not as much with that. It's a fun Dexter's Lab is really solid, particularly in that season. I don't think there was you know, I think it's a fun little concept. They go in the lab, get these things removed, go have lunch, go back to the lab. That's sort of all that it is. I appreciate it. I think it's fun. Yeah, I guess they don't want to have parents get upset and hear all those bleeps and stuff. But it makes sense, I guess, in the end. And it's unfortunate it didn't get to air. Even like around Space Ghost would have been fine. It's like 11 and, you know, you see this random Dexter's Lab and you're like, what was that? That would have been fun. I feel like they could have at least tried, but they didn't. And I get it. They don't want a major controversy and get upset because they let Dexter save the word and stuff like that. I'm glad it was finally released. It was for 15 years a did it really happen type of thing. And then eventually we saw it, and it really did happen. It's a fun little like lost media sort of thing that did come together. And I think, to be honest, anytime I brought it up to someone, they think of it fun. So I'm glad it is out. I think it is kind of a really creative idea, to be honest. But I can see why Cartoon Network would never really let the fly past them. So apologies to Editor Jim in the future for having to do all these bleeps.
This fucking sucks. Dexter's Lab.
But I don't know. I look back on this fondly and remember when it was released, and I guess I have more memories of this with 2013 than I do during Dexter's real run, but it is part of the second season and reminds me also how awesome Dexter's Lab was with a Craig McCracken, Gendy Tartakovsky collaboration and how cool those used to be. And I think you can tell there's some real awesome creative minds at hand making Dexter's Lab, even with this rude removal type of